It is our honor to present the Willie Nelson Lifetime Achievement Award to Alan Jackson.
I've definitely lived the American dream, and let me have that award, y'all. And I'm still living that honky-tonk dream, y'all.
Alan Jackson's days of performing live are officially over. The man who once owned every country stage is now fighting a battle that no encore can fix. Fans first noticed something was wrong during his performances: the way he moved, the way he struggled to stay steady, and the quiet pauses between songs. At first, many thought it was exhaustion or age catching up, but what he later revealed shocked everyone who had followed him for years.
I've been reluctant to talk about this publicly and to my fans. I have this neuropathy, a neurological disease. It's genetic that I inherited from my daddy. So it gets worse as it goes along, and there's no cure for it.
In this video, we're going to uncover the heartbreaking reason why Alan Jackson will never perform on stage again. For more than 40 years, Alan Jackson managed to fool everyone. He stood under the spotlight, sang his heart out, and smiled for the cameras. But behind that smile, he was hiding something painful. In 2011, doctors gave him news that he would keep secret for a decade. Fans thought he was simply aging. They had no clue that he was fighting for his life. When he finally revealed the truth in 2021, it broke hearts all across America. This is the real story of why Alan Jackson walked away from music forever. Alan Jackson was born on October 17, 1958, in the quiet town of Newnan, Georgia. His parents, Ruth and Eugene, worked hard to provide for their family. Ruth spent her days working in school cafeterias, while Eugene, known as Daddy Gene, worked as a mechanic at a Ford plant. They didn't have much, but they lived by strong values: work hard, stay humble, and keep music close to the heart. The family's home was built around Alan's grandfather's old tool shed. It was small, noisy, and barely big enough for 7 people. Alan had 4 older sisters, Diane, Kathy, Carol, and Connie, so privacy was something he never really experienced. But that tiny house was full of warmth, laughter, and the smell of Ruth's cooking. Life there wasn't easy, but music became Alan's escape. When Alan turned 16, he bought his first guitar for $50. It wasn't fancy, but to him it was priceless. He practiced every day, learning chords and singing along to records by Hank Williams and Gene Watson. A year later, at 17, he performed on stage for the first time in his high school's production of Oklahoma. Standing under those lights lit a spark inside him that would never go out. Alan had been working since he was 12 years old. His first job was in a shoe repair shop. After that, he did whatever work he could find, selling cars, building furniture, working as a carpenter, and even helping build houses. He didn't leave school because he wanted to. He left because his family needed the income. Every job taught him something new. Selling cars taught him how to talk to people. Carpentry taught him patience and focus. Every hour of labor and every dollar he earned brought him one step closer to his dream. Eventually, Alan started his first band, Dixie Steel. They weren't famous, and they didn't play big arenas. Instead, they performed in local bars, VFW halls, and small-town events across Georgia. Some nights they made enough to cover gas, other nights they barely broke even. But Alan kept pushing forward. His deep, honest voice started to stand out. Gradually, more people began to notice. Dixie Steel became a familiar name in the local music scene. It wasn't stardom, but it was progress. Alan also had something else that kept him grounded: Denise. The two met in high school and quickly fell in love. On December 15, 1979, when Alan was just 21, they got married. They didn't have money for a grand wedding, but what they did have was a strong bond. Denise always believed in Alan's dream, even when it seemed impossible. She worked as a flight attendant to help pay the bills while Alan focused on his music. There were tough days, money problems, arguments, and doubts, but they never gave up on each other. By the early 1980s, Alan was still performing with Dixie Steel. The crowds were small, the pay was little, but his determination never faded. He was already living the kind of life country songs talk about: hard work, love, struggle, and faith. Then in 1985, Alan and Denise made a life-changing decision. They packed all their belongings into a single U-Haul trailer and left Noonan, Georgia, heading for Nashville. They had no job waiting, no record label, and barely any savings. Alan carried nothing but a few songs and a big dream. It was a huge risk, but they believed in each other. Denise, especially, never stopped believing in Alan's talent. Their apartment in Nashville was small, and every bill felt heavier than the last. Denise took extra flights as a stewardess to help them stay afloat. Alan worked any job he could find, but their big break came from pure chance. One day during a routine flight, Denise recognized country legend Glen Campbell on board. Most people would have been too shy to say a word, but Denise didn't hesitate. She walked up to him and told him about her husband. She didn't ask for a record deal, just an opportunity. Glen didn't dismiss her. Instead, he handed her his manager's business card. That single moment changed everything. That card became their motivation to fully commit to Nashville. They had no guarantees, but they had hope. After moving, Alan landed a job in the mailroom at the Nashville network. He sorted mail, delivered packages, and kept a low profile, but he was always paying attention. That mailroom gave him a glimpse into how the country music world really worked. In his free time, he watched tapings of You Can Be a Star, a singing competition show. Alan studied every performer carefully. He knew he belonged up there. Then in 1986, his moment arrived. While sitting in the audience, someone asked if he wanted to perform. Alan stepped up and sang He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones. The crowd stood and cheered. In that moment, Alan Jackson was no longer a nobody. One of the producers that night, Keith Stegall, was so impressed that he started working with Alan, a partnership that would become one of the most important of Alan's entire career. Before long, Alan landed his first songwriting deal with none other than Glen Campbell's music publishing company. It wasn't glamorous. He was writing songs for other artists and earning a modest paycheck. But he was in the door. He spent hours every day writing, testing what worked and what didn't. Still, the path was far from easy. For years, Alan and Denise lived from paycheck to paycheck. Every record label turned him down. Some said he didn't have the right image. Others thought his sound was too traditional. Denise stayed strong, working long hours while Alan poured everything into his music. He watched his friends get signed, heard their songs on the radio, and wondered if his own break would ever come. Then, in 1989, everything changed. On June 26th, Alan Jackson became the very first artist signed to Arista Nashville, a new country branch of the famous Arista Records. It was a time when country music was evolving, with new names like Garth Brooks and Clint Black rising fast. Jackson's name immediately stood out. Arista Nashville's president, Tim DuBois, saw something different in him. Jackson had a pure, traditional sound that felt both new and familiar. That first signature on the label's contract marked the beginning of something big. The photos from that day still remain in Jackson's private collection. But just a few months later, doubts began to surface. In September 1989, Jackson released his debut single, Blue-Blooded Woman. Things didn't go as expected. The song only reached number 45 on the Billboard Country chart and failed to break the top 40. That slow start raised eyebrows. Some wondered if his old-school sound had already fallen out of style. Even a few at Arista questioned whether signing him had been a mistake. But Jackson didn't back down. The disappointment only made him more determined. Years later, he admitted that the failure of that song lit a fire in him. Blue-Blooded Woman may not have been a hit, but it introduced a voice that wasn't going anywhere. Then came his real breakthrough. On January 15, 1990, Jackson released his second single, Here in the Real World. Everything changed from that moment. The song connected deeply with listeners. It spoke about real life, its heartbreak, grit, and beauty. It climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Country chart and hit number 1 in Canada. Jackson had found his audience. Suddenly, critics who once doubted him began to pay attention. Here in the Real World wasn't just a hit, it was a turning point. From that point forward, Jackson's career took off. It began a streak that saw him land 27 consecutive singles in the top 10, something rarely seen in country music. With one song, he proved that country didn't need to follow trends, it only needed to be genuine. His debut album, also titled Here in the Real World, was released on February 27, 1990. It didn't just ride the wave of the hit single, it stayed on the charts for more than a year. 4 of its songs reached the top 5, Here in the Real World, Wanted, Chasing That Neon Rainbow, and I'd Love You All Over Again. That last one was especially personal. Jackson wrote it for his wife, Denise, to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. It became his first #1 hit. Remarkably, Jackson wrote or co-wrote 9 of the 10 songs on the album, a rare feat for a debut artist. The record went on to sell more than 2 million copies in the U.S. and earn double platinum status. It was clear that Jackson's voice, his songwriting, and his style had struck a lasting chord. When Alan Jackson released Don't Rock the Jukebox on May 14, 1991, it shook the country scene. The album produced 4 #1 singles in a row, the title track, Someday, Dallas, and Love's Got a Hold on You. Each song hit the top like clockwork. Then came something even more powerful, Midnight in Montgomery. It didn't reach #1 but landed at #3, and it stayed in people's minds long after it left the charts. That song was more than a tribute to Hank Williams. It felt as if Hank's spirit was right there in the room. Jackson had visited Williams' grave in Montgomery, Alabama, and the moment stayed with him. He recorded the song late at night, and you can feel that eerie stillness in every note. The album itself ran just over 31 minutes, short but packed with emotion. George Jones even made a surprise appearance singing the final line on Just Plain Possum, a nod to his nickname. Critics praised the album too. Entertainment Weekly gave it an A, something rarely given to a country record at that time. By the time the dust settled, Alan Jackson was no longer a rising star. He was leading the neo-traditional country movement. 1 year later, on October 6, 1992, he released A Lot About Livin' and A Little 'Bout Love. If Don't Rock the Jukebox had stirred things up, this album completely blew the doors open. The single Chattahoochee became more than a hit. It turned into an American anthem. Fans didn't just enjoy it, they lived it. The music video featuring Jackson water skiing in jeans became iconic. It won CMA Song and Single of the Year in 1994. The entire album was a powerhouse. It sold over 6 million copies and became Jackson's biggest commercial success. 5 singles reached the top 5 and 2 went straight to #1, She's Got the Rhythm and I Got the Blues, and Chattahoochee. Jackson co-wrote 7 of the 10 tracks and even collaborated with Randy Travis. The album title itself came from a line in Chattahoochee, showing just how big that song became. Then came a major decision that could have changed everything. In 1994, Alan Jackson parted ways with 1010 Management, the very team that had helped him rise from an unknown songwriter to a country superstar. He didn't act out of anger, he acted out of conviction. He wanted full control over his music, his message, and his image. So instead of sticking with the system, he signed with Gary Overton. That single decision sent shockwaves through Nashville. Most artists wouldn't dare switch teams when they're at the height of fame, but Jackson wasn't like most artists. He refused to be shaped by the machine. He wanted to keep things genuine. The industry saw it as a risk. Jackson saw it as something he had to do. That same year, on June 28th, he released Who I Am, and just like that, his gamble paid off. The album hit #1 on the country charts and climbed to #5 on the Billboard 200. In its first week, it sold over 100,000 copies. It produced 4 #1 singles, Summertime Blues, Gone Country, Livin' on Love, and I Don't Even Know Your Name. By January 1999, the album had already reached 4 times platinum status. One version even included a bonus remix of Chattahoochee for international fans. Jackson was no longer just an American star, he was becoming a global name. Critics gave the album a solid B in Entertainment Weekly, praising its simple, grounded production and Jackson's calm, steady voice. The list of musicians in the liner notes read like Nashville royalty, but Jackson wasn't done showing what he could do. Later that same year, in 1994, he proved his versatility once again. He co-wrote Clay Walker's hit If I Could Make a Living with Keith Stegall and Roger Murrah. The song was catchy, short, and clever, just 2 minutes and 14 seconds long, but it still went straight to number 1. Jackson didn't sing on it, yet his touch was clear in the lyrics. His writing was that sharp. In 1995, Alan Jackson reached a major milestone in his career. On October 24th, he released the Greatest Hits collection. This wasn't just another album, it marked an important moment in country music. It included all his biggest songs from his first 4 albums, along with 2 new ones, Tall, Tall Trees and I'll Try. Both of those new tracks hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. The album itself reached number 5 on the Billboard 200 and topped the country charts. It eventually sold over 6 million copies in the U.S. and went 6 times platinum. That same year, Alan Jackson won 8 major awards, including the CMA Entertainer of the Year. It was a big win, especially since country music was shifting toward newer sounds. Jackson held on to the traditional style and fans admired him for it. Then in 1999, he made another bold move. He teamed up with George Strait to release Murder on Music Row. This wasn't just a song, it was a statement. The lyrics claimed that someone had killed real country music. The steel guitar no longer cries, they sang. Their frustration with pop influences taking over was loud and clear. The title was based on a real crime that happened in 1989, when a man who worked for Cashbox magazine was murdered on Music Row in Nashville, a case later linked to a payola scandal. The song struck a nerve. Fans debated, critics debated, artists debated. Everyone had an opinion. And here's the surprising part. It was never even released as an official single, yet radio stations played it nonstop. It became so popular that it climbed to number 38 on the Billboard Hot Country chart, making it the highest charting album cut never officially released as a single during the broadcast data systems era. Only Garth Brooks' Belleau Wood had come close, but Jackson and Strait's song carried a stronger message. It proved how much people missed the old country sound. In May 2000, Jackson and Strait opened the Academy of Country Music Awards with that very song. It was a bold choice. Millions were watching live. They could have gone with something safe, but instead they reignited a fire in the country music world. The performance gained huge media attention and became one of the most memorable moments in the show's history. It wasn't just about performing, it was about taking a stand. Meanwhile, Jackson kept putting out albums that fans loved. Everything I Love came out in 1996. Then High Mileage followed in 1998. That one had a darker tone. Jackson later said it reflected personal struggles he was going through. Still, it produced 4 major hits, including Right on the Money, which hit number 1. In 1999, he released Under the Influence, a tribute to the country legends who shaped his career. And in 2000, When Somebody Loves You brought him back to his roots of classic storytelling. Each release added something new while keeping his traditional sound alive. It was one of the strongest stretches of his entire career. But behind all the fame and success, things weren't perfect. In early 1998, Alan and his wife Denise separated after 19 years of marriage. Fans believed their relationship was solid, but fame had taken its toll. Alan's schedule was packed, and the distance between them grew. Denise later revealed that Alan had been unfaithful. That moment changed everything. Alan admitted he felt lost, saying, "We were just kids when we started out. We didn't get a chance to grow up before committing." Their separation lasted several months and was deeply painful for both of them. Eventually, they reconciled, but it didn't happen overnight. It took time, faith, and effort. Denise leaned on her Christian beliefs, which helped her forgive and heal. She later wrote a book about their experience titled It's All About Him, Finding the Love of My Life. The book became a New York Times bestseller. In it, Denise opened up about the struggles of being married to a superstar, the hurt of betrayal, and how she rediscovered herself. Her honesty resonated with readers everywhere. Then came September 11th. The world changed, and so did Alan. On October 28, 2001, just 7 weeks after the attacks, he woke up around 4 a.m. with a melody in his head. Half asleep, he recorded it into a handheld device so he wouldn't lose it. That song became Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning? He wrote it in just a few hours. It wasn't political and it didn't preach. It simply asked questions, the same ones everyone else was asking at that time. At first, he didn't want to record the song. He worried people might think he was using the tragedy for attention, but his wife Denise and his producer Keith Stegall encouraged him to go ahead and share it. On November 7, 2001, Alan Jackson performed it live at the CMA Awards. He was originally set to sing Where I Come From, but changed plans at the last moment. Sitting on a stool with a full orchestra behind him, he poured his heart into the performance. The audience remained silent until the end, and then rose to their feet. It became one of the most unforgettable moments in CMA history. Radio stations started playing that live version immediately. His website even crashed from the sudden traffic. It felt like more than just music. It felt like a moment of healing. When the song officially released, it climbed straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and stayed there for 5 weeks. It even crossed over to the all-genre Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 28, which was rare for a country ballad. The song was later included in his 2002 album Drive, which debuted at #1 on both the Billboard 200 and Top Country Albums charts. In its first week, it sold over 211,000 copies. By May 2003, the album had gone 4 times platinum. Jackson included both the live and studio versions of the song. It went on to win Song of the Year at both the ACM and CMA Awards and earned Jackson his first Grammy. Alan Jackson and his wife Denise raised 3 daughters who became the center of his world. Their oldest, Maddie, was born on June 19, 1990. She didn't just follow in her father's footsteps, she built her own path. In 2017, she married Samuel Selushman, but tragedy struck less than a year later when he died in a boating accident. Somehow she found the strength to keep going. She founded the Nashville Foundation to help widows, orphans, and victims of human trafficking. In 2011, the same year he left Arista, he was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a genetic disorder that weakens nerves and muscles over time. It ran in his family. His father had it, as did his grandmother and sister. Alan kept it private for a decade. He continued to perform, record, and tour, even as his balance and movement began to change. He didn't want sympathy or special treatment. He just wanted to keep doing what he loved. In October 2017, the industry recognized him once more when he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Loretta Lynn, recovering from a stroke, attended in person to honor him. The moment was deeply emotional. The following year, in 2018, he was also inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. These weren't just honors, they were acknowledgments of a career that helped shape country music. Then in September 2021, he decided to go public. On the Today Show, Alan revealed that he had Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. He explained that it wasn't life-threatening, but that it was incurable and progressing. He wanted fans to understand why he sometimes seemed unsteady on stage, not because he was ill or intoxicated, but because of the disease. He promised to keep performing as long as he could, inspired by legends like Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson, who never truly retired. In 2022, Alan made an announcement that broke the hearts of fans everywhere. He revealed his final tour, Last Call, One More for the Road. Everyone knew this wasn't just another series of concerts, it was goodbye. After more than 4 decades in country music, he was stepping away. The most emotional part came when he confirmed that his illness was behind the decision. The disease had made it harder for him to stand, play guitar, and perform. But rather than quietly disappearing, he gave his fans one last chance to sing along with him. The tour began in June 2022 and quickly sold out in more than 30 cities. Tickets vanished within hours. Fans drove across states to see him one last time. For many, these concerts were more than shows. They were farewells to the voice they'd grown up with. While Alan was saying goodbye on stage, something beautiful was happening at home. In December 2022, Alan became a grandfather. His daughter Allie gave birth to a baby boy named Jackson Alvey. Photos of Alan holding his first grandchild spread across social media, melting hearts everywhere. Then, in June 2024, his daughter Maddie welcomed another son, Wesley Allen Smith. Though Alan had spoken openly about the challenges of his illness, he found new strength in his grandchildren. He said their laughter gave him hope and that playing music for them felt more meaningful than ever. Even as his body weakened, being a grandfather made him feel alive again. On May 17, 2025, it all came to an end. The final show of the tour took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the packed Fiserv Forum. Over 17,000 fans filled the arena, holding signs, wiping tears, and singing every lyric. Country stars appeared on screen with video tributes, and Jackson's family sent heartfelt messages. The moment no one will ever forget came when he sang "Remember When." As the last note faded, he stood alone in the spotlight and gave his farewell speech. His voice cracked as he called his journey a long, sweet ride. The crowd stood clapping for nearly 10 minutes. The concert was streamed online and aired on national television. Millions watched as one of country music's most beloved voices walked off stage for the final time. The curtain falling in Milwaukee did not mean silence. In the weeks that followed, tributes and messages arrived from every corner of the industry. Longtime friends, young artists who grew up on his records, and fans who had followed him for decades. He fielded interviews but kept most answers short. He said he was tired in the best way, grateful for what he had done and ready to spend more time at home. He wanted quieter days with Denise, more time for family, and the chance to be present for small moments he had missed while touring. At home, the pace changed. Mornings began with coffee and a slow walk around the property instead of rushes to airports. He worked in his garden, tinkered with guitars he never got to finish, and read stacks of letters fans had sent over the years. Some letters were long and raw, others were simple notes of thanks. He read them all and would often call Denise into the room to share a line that had struck him. Those exchanges felt like repair, a return to regular routines that had been put on hold for decades. Music still found him. He wrote when he felt the urge, not because he had to. A handful of songs trickled out over the next 2 years, a short acoustic piece for a friend's charity event, a duet with a former collaborator, and a gospel track recorded in the home studio with his family singing harmony. None of it was pushed as a major comeback. Instead, these recordings landed quietly, like postcards to people who had been on the journey with him. Radio stations played them selectively, and fans streamed them steadily. It was clear that his voice still moved people, even when the goal was simply to say something honest. His public appearances were rare and measured. He accepted invitations to speak at small events, to introduce young musicians, and to take part in benefit concerts where mobility demands were low. When he did perform, it was often seated, with a small band and an intimate setup. Those shows were different from the arena nights, less spectacle, more conversation. He introduced songs with a few words about where they came from, why they mattered, or who he had written them for. People listened differently. Tears came easily, laughter followed. The tone felt right to him, simple, direct, and warm. Health demands remained part of the conversation. He kept regular medical appointments and adjusted his schedule around physical therapy sessions. Some days were harder than others. He learned to accept help when he needed it and to ask for it without shame. Smaller honors and lifetime achievement acknowledgments arrived, each introduced by people who could speak about his work without turning it into legend. Young artists cited him as a model for staying true to one's voice while adapting to change. Songwriters pointed to his clear phrasing and economical storytelling as lessons in craft. Students at songwriting workshops still studied his songs to learn how to write within a form that respects both melody and language. In private conversations, he reflected on the arc of his career with a plain, clear tone. He spoke about choices he had made, the ones that had cost him comfort but kept his music honest. He spoke about mistakes and the work that followed them. Mostly, he spoke about the people who had been part of the story: bandmates, producers, road crews, and fans. He said he had never expected all of it, and that kept him humble. When asked about regrets, he named a few missed birthdays and a tour date or two. When asked about satisfaction, his answer was simple: music that still connected with people and a family that remained. So thanks for watching this video. We will see you in the next video.